Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift. By the early 1950s, Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift were Hollywood's golden pair. Young, luminous, and seemingly inseparable. Their friendship sparked during the filming of A Place in the Sun, shot between 1949 and 1950 when Taylor was just 17. Taylor often described Clift as a big brother, while Clift, already a respected method actor, found rare loyalty in her company. Tragedy struck on May 12, 1956. After leaving Taylor's Beverly Hills home, Clift's car collided with a telephone pole only a few blocks away. Taylor, hearing the crash, ran to the scene. According to biographer Patricia Bosworth, she cleared his airway, likely saving his life, a moment that left permanent marks, both physical and emotional. Clift survived but was left permanently disfigured, a devastating blow in an industry fixated on appearance. Taylor remained supportive, lobbying studios to keep casting him. Yet, as Clift's struggles with alcohol and prescription drugs intensified, tensions quietly rose. Some sources claim Clift felt growing unease with Taylor's unwavering devotion, interpreting it less as genuine friendship and more as pity, a perception that, whether real or imagined, drove them apart. The production of Suddenly last summer in 1959 exposed deeper fissures. Clift's health deteriorated notably, and though Taylor stood by him, their once easy bond strained under the weight of unspoken hurt. Speculation abounds that in his final years, Clift withdrew from even his closest confidants. Still, records indicate Taylor never stopped caring, even if their closeness dimmed into something more subdued and mournful. When Clift died on July 23, 1966, at just 45, Taylor was reportedly inconsolable. Their story stands as a stark reminder that even in Hollywood's brightest alliances, unseen wounds can silently drive people apart. Frank Sinatra and Peter Lawford. At the peak of their fame, Frank Sinatra and Peter Lawford were inseparable fixtures of the Rat Pack's golden era cool. Yet by March of 1962, a political snub destroyed their friendship. Sinatra, an ardent supporter of John F. Kennedy, had reportedly spent over $50,000 renovating his Palm Springs estate, including building a helipad and a guest house, all to welcome the president. According to biographer James Kaplan, Sinatra spared no expense, but under mounting pressure from Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, concerned about Sinatra's alleged ties to organized crime, JFK abruptly canceled his stay. Instead, the president bunked at Bing Crosby's home, a move that stung even deeper given Crosby's frosty relationship with Sinatra. Sinatra, blindsided and furious, turned his anger toward Lawford, JFK's brother-in-law. Historian J. Randy Taraborelli recounts that Sinatra delivered a brutal dismissal. "You're out, you're finished." Lawford was swiftly exiled from the Rat Pack, and comedian Joey Bishop stepped into his place for future appearances in films like Sergeants 3. Some biographers suggest Lawford's influence over JFK's decision was minimal, caught between loyalty to his powerful family and his famous friend. Rumors even tease that Lawford pleaded privately with the Kennedys to reconsider, but his efforts fell on deaf ears. The fallout was devastating. Lawford's career, once elevated by Rat Pack glamour, spiraled downward. His personal struggles, including substance-related incidents and a string of failed marriages, only deepened. Meanwhile, the Rat Pack's mystique began to fade, signaling not just the end of a friendship, but the slow unraveling of an entire era built on swagger, stardom, and loyalty, or the lack of it. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. In July of 1946, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis lit up the stage at the 500 Club in Atlantic City, launching a partnership that would dominate American entertainment. Martin, the smooth crooner, and Lewis, the wild comic, became a sensation across nightclubs, radio, and film. By 1950, they were making regular television appearances, although their true TV ascendancy would come later. Beneath the laughter, however, tension simmered. Lewis, driven by an intense creative vision, began taking control behind the scenes, directing, rewriting, and reshaping their act. According to Lewis's memoir, Dean and Me: A Love Story, he believed innovation was key, while Martin favored a more laid-back approach. Martin, feeling increasingly sidelined, was known to voice discontent, reportedly saying he was just a handsome guy who sings. Biographer Nick Tosches, in Dino Living High and the Dirty Business of Dreams, recounts that Martin privately grumbled about being nothing but a stooge for that kid, although exact quotes remain unverified. The final fracture came when Lewis publicly took credit for their success during press interviews. Their last performance together at New York's Copacabana on July 24, 1956, ended not with a bang but a cold handshake. Some accounts suggest Martin walked off stage without a glance back, although hard evidence is scarce. Despite widespread calls for a reunion, the two maintained a painful silence for nearly 2 decades. It took Frank Sinatra's intervention during Lewis's Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon in 1976 to orchestrate a brief, awkward reunion. At that point, the wounds ran deep. Some historians and fans speculate that, had they managed to balance their ambitions, Martin and Lewis might have reshaped the future of American comedy. But under the relentless glare of fame, not every friendship survives the climb. Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine. When Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine rose to fame in Hollywood's golden age, few predicted that their most intense drama would unfold away from the screen. Born just over 15 months apart, Olivia on July 1, 1916, and Joan on October 22, 1917, the sisters' relationship was fraught from the outset. Biographer Charles Hyam proposed their mother, Lillian, may have favored Joan while labeling Olivia as the difficult one, though solid proof remains elusive. By the early 1940s, both had become major stars. Olivia shone in Gone with the Wind in 1939, while Joan earned acclaim carving her own path. But on February 26, 1942, underlying tensions boiled over. At the 14th Academy Awards, Joan Fontaine claimed Best Actress for Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion, surpassing Olivia, who was nominated for Hold Back the Dawn. Backstage accounts described an air thick with resentment. In her memoir, No Bed of Roses, Fontaine observed, "I don't think there ever was a real friendship between us," a feeling echoed in subsequent interviews. Olivia, speaking to People magazine in 1988, acknowledged, "I married first, which was a great shock to her. I think she never got over that." Contemporary rumor held that Olivia believed Joan reveled in her victory, while Joan insisted Olivia had rebuffed her. Photographs from the 19th Academy Awards on March 13, 1947, when Olivia finally won her own Oscar for To Each His Own, show her appearing to walk past Joan without a word. Gossip circulated that this chilly moment cemented their estrangement, though neither sister confirmed it publicly. Speculation lingers that the forceful sibling rivalry was intensified by the demands of thriving in a male-dominated industry, but verifiable proof is scarce. Their rift would never mend. Joan Fontaine died on December 15, 2013, at the age of 96. Olivia de Havilland, who reached 104, passed away on July 26, 2020. Even decades later, their fractured bond remains one of Hollywood's most unsettling tales of familial discord, underscoring that not even shared blood guarantees unity beneath the glare of fame. Ava Gardner and Howard Hughes. At the pinnacle of Hollywood's golden age, Ava Gardner and Howard Hughes shared a complicated friendship that unraveled into a breach of trust. Gardner, soaring to fame in the early 1940s, initially admired Hughes's brilliance in aviation and film. Hughes, already a legend, reportedly became increasingly possessive, a trait many biographers link to his deepening paranoia. By the mid-1940s, Gardner discovered that Hughes had allegedly tapped her phone lines and hired private investigators to monitor her, a revelation that fractured their relationship. Although primary sources on the exact timeline remain scarce, biographer Peter Harry Brown recounts that Gardner called Hughes's behavior the ultimate invasion of trust. Furious, she ended all contact and, according to some accounts, even mocked his eccentricities within Hollywood circles. Gossip persists that Hughes never truly relinquished his fixation, amassing keepsakes linked to Gardner and covertly tracking her career for years after their break. Historians often point to this episode as part of a broader pattern in Hughes's life, marked by isolation, compulsive control, and distrust of even his closest allies. Gardner, ever defiant, refused to let the betrayal define her, carving out a legacy that stood independent of Hughes's shadow. Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster. Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster were a box office powerhouse during Hollywood's golden age, co-starring in 7 major films from the late 1940s through the mid-60s, including Gunfight at the OK Corral in 1957 and 7 Days in May in 1964. On screen, their chemistry was undeniable. Off-screen, it was a slow-burning rivalry. According to Douglas's autobiography, The Ragman's Son, tension spiked during the filming of The Devil's Disciple in 1959. Douglas claimed Lancaster secured a producer credit behind his back, a move he deemed a profound slight. Industry gossip at the time teased that their rivalry might have been exaggerated for publicity, but Douglas's own words suggest the bitterness was very real. He wrote that he admired Lancaster's talent but no longer trusted him after that incident. Although they continued to collaborate professionally, the easy camaraderie they once shared seemed to vanish. Some dare to guess that their partnership survived only because neither could afford to walk away from the box office magic they created together. In the cutthroat world of mid-century Hollywood, even the strongest alliances could crumble under the weight of ambition and ego. Orson Welles and John Houseman. In the late 1930s, Orson Welles and John Houseman were an unstoppable force in American theater and radio. Their Mercury Theater productions, including the infamous War of the Worlds broadcast in October of 1938, stirred public imagination, though later research suggests the so-called nationwide panic was far less widespread than legend claims. Still, their reputations soared. Behind the scenes, however, creative tensions simmered. Welles, a prodigy with a restless vision, and Houseman, a seasoned producer and collaborator, often clashed over control and direction. By late 1939, during the early development of Citizen Kane, their partnership fractured. Houseman exited the project before filming began, frustrated by Welles' unpredictable working style. Decades later, Houseman's memoir Run Through painted Welles as brilliant but chaotic, while Welles, in interviews, hinted that Houseman lacked the creative spark he craved in a collaborator. Although no public feud erupted, the two never worked together again. Several experts theorize that without their split, Welles' later battles with Hollywood studios and his string of unfinished projects might have been less devastating. Speculation lingers that unresolved bitterness quietly shadowed both men's careers, but neither ever spoke openly about a personal betrayal. Their dazzling partnership ended not with a dramatic blowout, but with a slow, irreversible drift, one that cost Hollywood one of its most electrifying creative duos. Greta Garbo and Mercedes de Acosta. In the competitive realm of the era's grand cinema, few bonds unraveled more dramatically than that of Greta Garbo and Mercedes de Acosta. Garbo, the Swedish-born luminary who influenced silent and early sound films in the 1920s and 30s, became forever linked to the line, "I want to be alone," popularly attributed to her, though it was actually a line from the 1932 film Grand Hotel. Away from the screen, Garbo maintained a carefully guarded life, but her closeness with de Acosta, a playwright and poet celebrated for her fearless approach at a time of strict social codes, penetrated that reserve. Their alliance, formed in the early 1930s, fueled relentless questioning. Some historians maintain their connection leaned toward romance, while others argue it was largely a profound platonic closeness, an ambiguity that only amplified public intrigue. Biographer Robert A. Shanka pointed out that de Acosta once claimed she could attract any woman from any man, though skeptics caution that her habit of self-mythologizing renders such assertions difficult to confirm. By the late 1940s, strains were already apparent, but it was the 1960 publication of de Acosta's memoir, Here Lies the Heart, that decisively shattered any remaining rapport. Though she avoided explicit name-dropping, her allusions to intimate ties with notable women, Garbo among them, were unmistakable. For Garbo, who had spent years perfecting a distant, elusive image, the book came as a public betrayal. According to Barry Paris's Garbo, the actress abruptly cut ties, dismissing de Acosta's frantic pleas for understanding. Whispers persisted that Garbo later wrote off de Acosta as "a woman I used to know," a dismissive line frequently repeated but never confirmed by Garbo herself. De Acosta, devastated, insisted in private letters, documented by Shanka, that her intention was merely to pay tribute to their bond, not exploit it. Still, the rift was permanent. Their friendship, once bold enough to transcend Hollywood's steep boundaries, collapsed under the weight of broken trust and unstoppable public curiosity. Today, their narrative remains a powerful lesson in how determined those early Hollywood icons were to preserve their secrets, and how swiftly those secrets could dismantle even the strongest alliances. Errol Flynn and David Niven. In the whirlwind of 1930s Hollywood, Errol Flynn and David Niven were fast friends and roommates, sharing a modest house on Camino Palmero. Their rapport, built on charm, ambition, and a shared appetite for mischief, seemed unbreakable. Yet by 1942, cracks had begun to show. When Flynn faced a highly publicized criminal trial that year, a case he eventually won, Niven kept a cautious distance. Certain scholars maintain Niven, then gaining momentum with hits like The Dawn Patrol and Wuthering Heights, feared being dragged into scandal. Legends tease that Flynn quietly resented what he saw as abandonment, though no direct evidence confirms he ever voiced this bitterness publicly. In his 1971 memoir, The Moon's a Balloon, Niven described Flynn as a man who lived dangerously, a portrayal many read as both fond and faintly damning. While their friendship never officially imploded, it undeniably cooled, leaving behind a cloud of speculation. Whispers persist that Flynn, known for his loyalty to friends, harbored a private grudge until his death in October of 1959, though hard proof remains elusive. Their story remains a sharp reminder that in the golden age of Hollywood, survival often came at the cost of loyalty. Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks. Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks stood among the silent film era's greatest luminaries, and in 1919 they unsettled Hollywood's power structure by forming United Artists with Mary Pickford and D.W. Griffith. Their ambition, often characterized as prioritizing art over commerce, granted performers remarkable autonomy over their creations. Although frequently depicted as close colleagues, Chaplin and Fairbanks largely followed separate professional and personal paths. By the late 1930s, divisions had begun to appear. Fairbanks' health was failing, and Chaplin's increasingly provocative political positions were sparking debate. While Fairbanks remained a beloved emblem of Hollywood's golden style, Chaplin's reputation grew more tangled. According to biographer Jeffrey Vance, fractures at United Artists emerged before Fairbanks' demise on December 12, 1939. Some analysts propose that Fairbanks became exasperated with Chaplin's growing demands and idiosyncrasies, though definitive records are scarce. Legends imply that their last visits were awkwardly polite, lacking the camaraderie they once shared. Chaplin's own musings in his 1964 autobiography hint at a profound sense of grief, though no direct statement supports the oft-quoted phrase, "It was as if a death had occurred." What is certain is that the idealism that once bound them, creators standing apart from the Hollywood system, never quite reclaimed its original spirit after Fairbanks passed away.